Hey, everybody, and welcome to the DLF Trades on the DLF YouTube channel. It's been a day. It has been a day. Russ and Addison here to complain about our day. We had ideas, and those ideas just kept. Life did not approve of our ideas, and out of seemingly left field, like there's been. It's a day later now, so saying Steph Diggs got traded to the Texans is old news for people listening, watching, whatever, however you absorb this just pivotal show in your life. But it's still real for us. It's happening right now, and this really did take precedence over what we thought anyway, because this is the here and the now, and this is. Like there's 4 players involved in this, I think, altogether. There's Steph Diggs, there's Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and there's CJ Stroud. And I think there's one winner in all of this. And 3.
There's some winners, I think, in Buffalo.
Yeah. Whoever they draft in the first round. I think that's the real answer.
Kincaid should do well. James Cook might get more targets out of the backfield.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. Like, I'm not even ready to think about Buffalo. There was a poll put out, who do you prefer in Dynasty, Josh Allen or CJ Stroud? And Stroud was killing Josh Allen.
Oh, jeez, dude.
Love the overreaction on the Twitters. But yeah, we're here to talk about the fallout of this Steph Diggs traded for a 25-second to the Houston Texans, which you got, like, for a 30-year-old wide receiver who's making a lot of money, that feels like a good return.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it would be really tough to get a second that's going to happen in a couple of weeks. Like, and being, taking a third this year or a second next year, you might as well just take a second next year. Like, the Texans are almost in not much of a rush at this point. They have 2 real years before they really need to worry about what they're going to have to do in paying CJ Stroud, which already seems like it's going to be a problem.
Right. But they're doing the dynasty thing. They say, hey, we got 2 more years. Let's maximize these 2 years. We trade for Joe Mixon. We trade for Stefon Diggs. They can focus on defense with their first round pick this year. Oh boy.
Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting future, but we're in the here and now, and let's just go. Let's keep moving. Let's stay positive. Let's stay happy. Let's stay talking about, well, so we're going to start off talking about CJ Stroud. And the first, like I said, clear winner right here, because he can close his eyes and throw the ball, and it's going to go to someone who's good at catching the ball.
Yes.
So let's talk about CJ Stroud. 12-team Superflex. CJ Stroud for Jalen Hurts and Davante Adams. Now, I've seen in recent talks, podcasts, things where CJ Stroud is going ahead of Jalen Hurts. I know the community feels in a weird place with Jalen Hurts. The offense was weird / sort of bad towards the end. He still finished as the QB2, So now with what is hopefully a better run offense with Saquon.
Yes.
Adjective Barkley. I had to sort of censor myself a little bit on that one. Like, this offense should be getting better, so Jalen Hurts should be technically doing even better, even with the loss of Jason Kelce, which is not nothing, by the way, absolutely not nothing. In which case, again, I know that Davante Adams isn't near what he used to be in either production or dynasty value, but give me the plus on the guy I like better, and I'm going to take it.
That's basically it. I feel like I've gotten to the point now where, we called the quarterbacks in Superflex like the big 3, right? And we were referring to Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, where that was kind of like the top tier. And then tier 2 was like 5, 6, 7 names of guys that were, the Burrows and the Herberts and the Lamars, and Stroud got bumped up into there because of his rookie season. Kyler maybe at the back end, Trevor Lawrence maybe at the back end. Anthony Richardson is in there too. Like, there are a lot of names in that kind of second tier, but I think I'm getting ready to flesh out that tier even more. I think Allen and Mahomes are still clearly in the top tier for me. And then I think the second tier is Hurts, Stroud, and Lamar. I think that is tier 2 for me. And then tier 3 is Herbert and Kyler and Anthony Richardson. And if you want to throw in like Trevor Lawrence in there too, maybe Jordan Love. Like those are the guys that they've either had good success, but it wasn't consistent, or we're hopeful for more production in the future. They still have good situations, but they just haven't put it all together. Like we've seen from the big three and Lamar, and now I think you can include CJ Stroud in there based on his rookie season and Stefon Diggs coming to town. So I think I'm fleshing out those top tiers more. With that being said, since Hurts and Stroud are in the same tier, give me the plus. just give me Davante Adams. That player could be almost anything that is somewhat relevant, and I would take the Jalen Hurts side on this one. Now, the same would be said for if Davante Adams was on the CJ Stroud side, then I'd take Stroud and Adams over Hurts.
All right, so this next one's a little bit much of a bit of a bigger boy. CJ Stroud, Travis Etienne, and the 211 for Puka, Dak Prescott, and the 112. Stroud, Etienne, 211. 926.5 for 30 and 114 for a total of 1470. Puka, 640. Love to see it. Dak Prescott still up there at 593. The 112 at 212 for a total of 1445. Fair.
Yep.
And I got to be honest. I'm going to take my wide receiver bias. I'm going to take my Puka bias. And I think I'm taking Puka and Dak here. Dak is 30, which in the grand scheme isn't really all that old for me. I don't care. Like, I'm not worried about Dak retiring anytime soon. Now, I can be falling victim for me in that if this was a wide receiver of the exact same value as ETN, I'd probably take that side. But I really like, thank you, because I don't have it pulled up. I see your eyes and your hand move. Yeah. I'm going to take my Puka bias, who I really, really like, who I do believe is going to keep producing as a wide receiver one. Dak Prescott, who is going to produce as a QB1. And a first-round pick, yes, it's the last one of them. It's the 112, but it's still a first-round pick. And I do believe Stroud will most likely continue to outscore Dak. But by how much? And will Etienne, as a top 5 running back, outscore Puka? Maybe not. Like, it's going to be close if at worst. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, give me the QB that I've seen do it a lot. Give me the wide receiver I believe belongs up there. Give me the 112, who I'll still get a nice wide receiver, or maybe even the RB1 in this draft. And I think I take that side. I don't hate either side of this, but I think give me the Puka Dak side.
If I told you that Travis Etienne then got replaced by Jordan Addison, would that make a difference for you?
You're the worst. Of course it'll make it different.
It was the first receiver next to him in value.
Yeah, I love that much, much more, but I still think I stick with Puka and Dak because I believe enough in Dak's scoring that I don't feel the need to take, like, that's a really big drop from Puka to Addison. I don't think it's that big of a drop from Stroud to Prescott.
What if it was Waddle? Waddle is like 2 receivers up from ETN.
I love Jalen Waddle. Yeah, I think I'd go to the Stroud Waddle side at that point.
See, I think this is that little exercise, I think, put me over toward the Stroud ETN side because, Stroud is definitely an upgrade over Dak Prescott in almost every regard, outside of just like experience. Like we've seen Dak be a top QB multiple years, and that's just the fact that Stroud is a sophomore this year. But ETN, I still think, is a very good player. I mean, he was the RB2 in fantasy last year, still in the same situation, great offense. And I think that, where your hang up might just be that he's a running back. But if you're able to springboard from him over to a wide receiver that you really like to replace the loss of Puka, then I think that makes that side a little bit more friendlier for you to be able to take on Stroud and ETN. I was on the Stroud ETN side on this one too. I understood the sandwich aspect of it, of like you just prefer 2 and 3 instead of 1 and 4 if you were to rank these 4 pieces out. And then you got a nice little side appetizer of a 1 round bump up from your 211 to the 112. You know, I understood that, but I just think having CJ Stroud right now is a gold mine. Travis Etienne is a very good top 5 dynasty running back for me, top 6 maybe. And I think I would just rather prefer those two. But I definitely get the other side. This is very even trade.
All right, so let's move on to Nico Collins. Let's actually talk for a second before we get into this. Is there a wide receiver you're more worried about between Nico and Tank Dell?
It's Nico for me. Although I get different arguments for each of them. To me, I've been saying since November that Nico Collins has been in danger of a receiver coming in to Houston.
I agree. I was there.
Yeah, and I think that Nico was more in danger because I think my assumption was that they brought in a more outside wide receiver, whereas Tank Dell felt like he was a little bit more solidified in his role as kind of like that slot deep threat, you know? Yeah. So Nico to me was a little bit scarier to hold through. And I think he's the person that gets the most value lost from Stefon Diggs come over. Now, there are other arguments that can counter that of Stefon Diggs is older, kind of didn't look good to end the year last year. Nico might just be the better player right now and could get more snaps over Diggs. If that's not the case, he's a free agent at the end of the year. He could go somewhere else next year. So from a dynasty lens, that might not be terrible. You might just kind of have a rougher year this year. But as of right now for 2024, I am more concerned about Nico Collins than I am for Tank Dell. But Tank is coming off the injury as well, too. So it's a really interesting and weird situation for these wide receivers.
Yeah, the only thing that worries me more for Tank was, and that's assuming I remember what I'm remembering correctly, that Tank Dell had a larger ADOT than Nico did.
That's a good question.
And that's what would worry me, is that if we are talking deeper passes, Diggs is that dude down the field. So Tank losing those downfield passes could be rough. Of course, that's not all Tank Dell is, and but the problem is that's not all Diggs is, that's not all Nico. Like these guys are all very good. Diggs, we've seen be elite, and I understand that he absolutely tailed off at the end of both of the last 2 seasons, but man, I'm putting also some of that towards attitude, because there's a reason he got traded.
Yeah.
He's made it pretty clear he wasn't thrilled to be there. So we might see a reinvigorated Steph Diggs in Houston. First of all, so much warmer there. So much warmer.
It is a lot warmer for sure.
On those old bones. It'll be nicer for him.
Yep. And inside, even better too. More climate conditioned as well.
Oof. Getting better and better.
Tank Dell had a 14 ADOT. Nico was at 10.9. So
I mean, that's a big.
That's a substantial difference. Yeah.
So that's the part that worries me a little bit. Now, again, not to take anything. Well, not again, because I didn't even really say this. Not to take anything away from CJ Stroud, but some of that had to be how the offense was run. That was not Stroud is great. Stroud is amazing. Stroud lifted up those wide receivers, but regardless of which wide receivers were on the field and who was hurt when, because everyone took their turns getting hurt, that offense kept running, in which case it's a well-run offense, which means I firmly believe they will find a way to get the ball in the hands of their playmakers. Mm-hmm. So I do think all 3 can be relevant, but there's a ceiling that's absolutely capped by adding Stefon Diggs to this team.
Right. And an inconsistent.
All of them except for Stroud's.
Right. Yep.
All right, so let's go into the Nico Collins trades, because this is going to get very, very interesting to see how valuations have shifted. 12-team, 1 quarterback. Nico Collins for the 110, Keenan Allen, and the 210. Nico Collins, 541.1. The 110, 289. Keenan Allen, 179. The 210, 124, a total of 591. So these 3 pieces together come pretty close to equaling Nico Collins. his value before all of this happened. I was always a little worried about Nico Collins because it did take Tank Dell getting hurt for Nico to really break out. And that always will worry me, that when it takes an injury for a wide receiver to show out. So I'm stuck on the fact that the shine has been taken off of Nico for me a little bit. Keenan Allen, I do believe, is very, very good, but having that 6-year age gap and what the Texans offense just bolsters for people, I'm not really sure the 110 still bridges that gap. Just for value wise, like maybe if that 210 was an early second, like if that 210 was like the 202, so you had 2 picks in like 4-ish, I might do it anyway, because that's probably a tier on its own, those end of the first to like mid-second. So getting 2 dart throws in that area would make me feel a lot better about it. I think this is still Nico Collins, but I got to be honest, I don't think I bat an eye if I see this go down in the real world.
No, I definitely don't. I think I'm also going to pick Nico Collins on this one because, I mean, the analyzer shows it, but it felt that way before you even look at the values of this is a compilation of value for it's a 3-for-1 compiling of value for Nico Collins. To where, yes, his value got hurt because of Stefon Diggs, but from a dynasty aspect, like I was saying before, like he could still go somewhere else. Stefon Diggs might just not be good anymore and could age out. Somebody in the comment section of a video, the reaction video for the Stefon Diggs, said that this is Antonio Brown going to the Buccaneers. Like, did you drop Godwin or Evans because of that? That it's not a terrible.
That's a little too far for me.
It's not terrible though. I definitely see the comparison. It's one of the closest, I think, in terms of like this very specific situation.
Well, we saw Brown flame out by the time he went to the Bucs.
His one game in New England was great.
We saw Antonio Brown flame out before he went to the Bucs. We have not seen a straight up flame out of Diggs. We've seen declines as seasons have gone on, which absolutely could be about age. But I'm absolutely not ready to make that complete comparison. But you're right. Like, it's not as if it was 2-3 years ago, Diggs going to a team. It's not. But Diggs is still good enough. And especially a lot of his skill set is route running, which doesn't matter about age with me. So was it with Antonio Brown, but a lot more was involved in that scenario in total anyway. But let's talk about the next one because it gets a lot more interesting. Nico Collins and David Montgomery for Saquon Barkley and Cooper Kupp. Nico Collins 541, David Montgomery 212 for a total of 753. Saquon 434, Cooper Kupp 271, total of 705. Now this one is almost 1-for-1-ish to me. Nico for Saquon, fine. Montgomery for Kupp feels weird, but it's not as off as you'd think it should be. But like, if you're telling me I can move on from this question at wide receiver to a stud running back who just landed on a very good offense, I could move off of David Montgomery, who there's the risk of him seeing less work with how well Gibbs showed out while Montgomery was hurt, but also isn't a complete timeshare regardless. And get Cooper Kupp, who, again, is in the wide receiver equivalent of a timeshare. he and Puka play pretty similarly, but we've seen them coexist just like we've seen Montgomery and Gibbs coexist. And is there that much of a difference between a 26-year-old running back and a 30-year-old wide receiver? I mean, not that much.
Yep.
Like if Montgomery was 27 or 28, we'd be saying they're the same thing, So this feels very, very fair to me, in which case give me Saquon, who I believe is the best player in this trade.
Yeah, I mean it's weird. It's a top 10 running back versus like a top 20 wide receiver right now. And because of the wide receiver running back dynasty values, they're relatively even, or in this case, Nico is ahead of Saquon. But yeah, Saquon definitely feels like the safer asset. He feels like the most elite asset for 2024 if you're looking at just that lens, which if you're taking on a wide receiver like Cooper Kupp, you're probably looking at 2024. So this is a lot of production on one side, even though maybe the dynasty value is starting to trend downward for both players. But yeah, I mean, I just give me Saquon Barkley on this one. I'll soak up whatever points Cooper Kupp is willing to give me and not have the headache of the Texans wide receiver room right now.
Yeah. All right, so let's move down now to, we're not talking about Tank Dell. We're talking about Dalton Kincaid. I was not ready for that.
We got to do a little bit of Bills.
Actually, look what you did. Look what you did.
This is an actual trade. I didn't just pull this one just to make it fun. This was an actual trade. So
12-team Superflex, 2 point per receptions for tight end. Dalton Kincaid straight up for Tank Dell. Now, the tight end premium button on the analyzer is only for 0.5. So you're going to need to raise this a little bit. Dalton Kincaid, 394.7. Tank Dell, 400. So this is already insanely even. And we're talking, we really should boost Kincaid a bit for getting an extra 0.5 on top of what that button click did. All of that being said, I want the wrong answer in Tank Dell in this situation. The truth is, upper tier, not top tier, upper tier tight ends, those tight ends that you feel good starting, which I think a lot of people are there for Kincaid. I said earlier, I'm not really thrilled with Kincaid. He wasn't my favorite coming in, and I didn't like the landing spot of Buffalo. It's a little better without Diggs there now, but Buffalo has spent too many years saying we want to get the tight end involved for me to believe that they want to get the tight end involved. But again, Kincaid had a pretty good chunk of production this past season.
I was without Knox, though. You mentioned that before. Knox is still there.
And it was, I think there was one or two games, even towards the end of the season, that he didn't do great. But the truth is, in a 2 point per reception premium for tight ends league, that upper tier of tight ends becomes so valuable.
Yes.
So the answer here is it really should be Dalton Kincaid. For me to move off of a top 5 or 6 tight ends at this point in a 2 point per reception league, it's going to take more than a top 20 wide receiver. Mm-hmm. And that's all I feel safe calling Tank Dell at this point. Even before the Diggs thing, the Tank Dell thing was a lot more like heart for me than it was reality. Like I liked him coming in, and then he showed out, so I loved him. Mm-hmm. And he did really, really well when he played. So I really, really do like Tank Dell, but like I'm stuck more in that 12 to 15-ish area. And again, that is out of personal bias more than anything else.
Yeah, that's above market for sure.
Yeah, and again, I really just really, really like him. So I hate that you made me do this, but the answer is Kincaid because he's a young, hyped tight end in a 2 point per reception league.
The two people, for people who haven't played in a 2 PPR tight end premium, it is absolutely insane. And it, as much as it elevates the elite guys to where they're like overly elite, it also helps the back end guys as well too. Like if you only catch 3 receptions in a game, that is 6 fantasy points just from the receptions. Let alone if you caught 30 yards with those 3 receptions, that's 9. If you lucked your way into a touchdown, now you're at 15 on 3 for 30 and 1. That's 15 fantasy points. Which, for Tank Dell, that would have to be 7 for 80 if he doesn't score. That's the difference there in terms of what that does for tight ends. So Kincaid is definitely the correct answer in this one. I do agree with you that I am not a huge Kincaid guy. I think he's a little overvalued. So I would be utilizing this trade as a way to go from Tank Dell to Dalton Kincaid to then McBride or, Andrews or somebody like that, like a tight end that I think has more production and is better and has maybe similar or a little bit more dynasty value as well too. It's just springboarding my way up the ranks. But yeah, I think you have to take Dalton Kincaid in this one.
Well, let's move on to a little bit more of a common league. 12-team super flex with just your regular 0.5 tight end premium. Puka Nacua, Dalton Kincaid and Justin Fields for Anthony Richardson, Zay Flowers, and a 25 second. Puka, 640. Dalton Kincaid, 395. Justin Fields, 143 for a total of 1178. Anthony Richardson, 670. Zay Flowers, 347. 25 second, 82 for a total of 1100. This is such a confusing trade.
It's weird.
I mean, Puka and Anthony Richardson are closer than I expected them to be, 670.3 to 639.9. Like, that's very, very close. I would assume Richardson would be higher because he you know, I don't want to call him a stud quarterback because I don't think we've seen enough for it to be there, but he's valued as a stud quarterback. Mm-hmm. And I do think he goes in above Puka in drafts and trade value and everything. So then it comes down to how you feel about Flowers and Kincaid, and then a 25 second, I'm taking Justin Fields. Like, in a 0.5 premium, I'm still probably taking Kincaid over Zay Flowers. I wasn't a big Flowers fan when he came in, but I realized I was lower on him than I should have been. But again, Flowers only really did well when Mark Andrews was out. So it's tough to go forward with thinking that Zay Flowers is going to be that 200 plus point per season guy when it took the pass catcher one on that team getting hurt. Like, this is such a weird trade to the point where I think I'd go with the most valuable player in Anthony Richardson and figure out the rest later. Mm-hmm. But I legitimately don't know what to do with this.
I think that's the way that you have to go about this, because I almost said that there's not a quarterback on the other side, but there technically is with Justin Fields, but it kind of feels like there isn't, to where, like, there's such a disparity between Richardson and Justin Fields. Like, if that was Derek Carr, does that change anything for you? I mean, at least he's a starter, I guess.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's someone that you can put in the starter position. Like, you can.
I guess so. But I mean, it's like Anthony Richardson to me just feels like the better player in this whole entire thing by maybe not by a considerable amount, but by like a decent amount. I think I would still, Zay Flowers and Dalton Kincaid are close enough, even in a 0.5 PPR premium, that I can just effectively cross them off. So Flowers in a second for Fields and Puka, like, that's fine to me. So give me Anthony Richardson, and like you said, I'll deal with the rest later. I'm not mad to have Zay Flowers. I think that he's a very good player. And again, it feels like a player that you could easily springboard into somebody else that you like. It doesn't feel like a dead asset, so to speak.
Oh, no. Having a talented young wide receiver on your team is never a bad thing, especially like Addison was saying, if you want to keep things rolling. Like, you can find a rebuilding team and be able to move Flowers to them pretty easily, I'm sure.
Yep. Yeah. And you get Anthony Richardson. You get the top quarterback, elitely valued quarterback.
Again, it's so rough, right? Like, the specific players always make it so much harder than just looking at the values. But man, that's a rough one. Those are some good trades. I'm still not ready to accept this whole Diggs to Houston thing. It's still, I'm a little shook by it. This is almost like when Sammy Watkins got traded. Like, I was shook by that. It was a big deal back then.
I'm sure it was.
Like, I am shooketh. But we're going to take that off air, and you don't need to see that. This has been the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. Russ Fisher at Dynasty Outhouse, Addison Hayes at AmazeHayes_. We'll catch you next time.